First, we just witnessed more blatant, malicious deception, smears, lies, besmirchment from the mob and the media. Look at this article in the New York Times. It is entitled, "A Beloved Bar Owner Was Skeptical About the Virus, Then Took a Cruise." Times columnist, well, this woman's name is Ginia Bellafante, pretty much all but accused yours truly of murder. The story featured a well-liked New York bar owner. His name was Joe Joyce, apparently an avid fan of Fox News. First, I want to stop. With all my heart, I want to extend my sympathy to Mr. Joyce's friends. So well-liked, apparently, his family, his loved ones. And Mr. Joyce apparently was a very special person. I'm sure this is very hard on all of them and so many other people that are dealing with what the president rightly calls an invisible enemy. It is an enemy. Now, the Times claimed that because of something I said in early March 9th to be exact, well, Joyce decided it would be okay to take a cruise to Spain. Now, they claim he ultimately contracted coronavirus, didn't quite tie it to the cruise completely, and sadly, he passed away. Now, this is where the New York Times slander begins. In order to smear yours truly, this woman exploited a man's tragic death. She willingly, maliciously, purposefully took something I said completely out of context, and as proven by all my past statements that the New York Times was very well aware of, and it gets worse. The remarks that she used, yeah, they were from March the 9th, again, taken out of context. It was also 8 days after Mr. Joyce embarked on his cruise. Those are the remarks she referred to in her slanderous piece. That is slander. That is libel. And forget about me in all of this. Politicizing a tragedy, this New York Times so-called writer, reporter, whatever she is, has added to the pain and suffering of a family that deserves better. This was all done to vilify this program and this channel. And that's not all. As reporter Joel Pollack of Breitbart.com and then multiple other outlets, to their credit, pointed out that when the New York Times got caught spreading the lie, in other words, whoops, he already took the cruise. Yeah, we messed that up. What they did is they didn't make a correction. They didn't highlight a change. They just tried to sneak it in a stealth edit in the article. In other words, to include a more accurate timeline, considering they botched it the first time. And by the way, that completely contradicted the entire thesis of their article. A real journalist, a real newspaper would admit that they were wrong, issue an apology, issue a correction. In an interesting way, their stealth edit is nothing but an admission of their guilt and an example how they tried to cover up their smear, their slander, their lies, and everything else. Ms. Bellafante, she's a hack. She works for a disgraceful organization, the same people that lied, Russia, Russia, impeach, impeach, Ukraine, Ukraine, and Kavanaugh, Kavanaugh, same people that protected Clinton, that protected Comey, the deep state, and that never investigated the biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in history because they were too busy spreading conspiracy theories and more hoaxes. And by the way, yet another example of beyond journalist malfeasance here. They're culpable and quietly editing the content when they are caught red-handed. And by the way, that's not where this story ends. It gets worse for them. On February 27th, 3 days before Mr. Joyce decided to go on his cruise, the same New York Times hack that tried to blame me for his death, Ginia Bellafante, she tweeted this: "I fundamentally don't understand the panic. Incidence of the disease is declining in China. And by the way, the virus is not deadly in vast majority of cases. Production and so on will slow down and will obviously rebound." Okay, that is the type of behavior. By the way, same New York Times 5 or 6 days after the president put the travel ban in effect, that would be the same New York Times that said, who says it's not safe to travel to China? Bad advice there too. This is the kind of rampant hypocrisy, negligent behavior that is so widespread. This is the 99% of the mob and the media, and I call them a mob for a reason. They are nothing but state-run print, state-run TV. They are the allies of all things radical, democratic, socialist, and extremists. Tonight, their pattern of misconduct can be broken down into 3 categories. Let's look at 1. The New York Times played down, they ignored the virus. Number 2, they politicized the virus. Remember, they used it to call the president a racist with the travel ban. and they accused the president, Fox News, yours truly, this program, not taking the virus seriously enough. They were given all the evidence to the contrary. For more details, let's look at our comprehensive timeline. New York Times, January 8th, they reported, quote, there is no evidence that the new virus is readily spread by humans. Okay? Keep in mind, in January, China was involved in a massive cover-up, and the information that we were getting was full of lies, completely inaccurate. January 14th, World Health Organization, remember them? We pay those bills. Chinese authorities have found no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission. January 15th, COVID-19, well, remember, it wasn't even on Nancy Pelosi's radar. Top Democrat in the country was all smiles. She's doing the selfies, giving away pens, you know, signing off on her big impeachment stunt with commemorative everything. But only a week later, January 21st, the first case, January 21st, the first case of coronavirus in the U.S. On that very same day, even America's top expert, who I have a ton of respect for, he has spent a life, he has saved lives all throughout his career. He didn't understand it either. He was being lied to, too. Dr. Fauci said this is not a major threat to the people of the United States. January 26th, Fauci reiterated the virus is, quote, very, very low risk to the United States. I'm not attacking Dr. Fauci. He was working with Chinese lies as spread by the World Health Organization. Then, of course, I had him on my show on January 27th. 2 days later, you had people like BuzzFeed publishing a headline, don't worry about the coronavirus, worry about the flu. Oh, CNN was saying that on March the 4th. We'll get to that. January 31st, Vox tweeted, is this going to be a deadly pandemic? No. Same day, Washington Post published a piece with the headline, how our brains make coronavirus seem scarier than it is. Now, the president, he doesn't seek the advice, thankfully, from the Washington Post, the media mob, Vox, any of them, because 10 days after the first case emerged in this country, your president, President Donald J. Trump, made the boldest decision to ban travel to and from China. He declared a public health emergency. It is incalculable how many untold thousands of Americans did not contract this disease, and untold American lives were saved. By the way, he got nothing but criticism, racism, xenophobia, fear-mongering, hysteria. This decisive action, though, 10 days after the first case, it bought us time. It saved us from an immeasurable amount of suffering. The mob and the media, they were outraged. Fake news, CNN accusing the president of using the coronavirus to spread fear and racism and xenophobia. I told you, they're just echoing quid pro quo Joe. Washington Post, early February, their headline was this, why we should be wary of an aggressive government response to coronavirus. February 4th, what was Nancy Pelosi doing? Remember, she was doing the little pre-tears. Then she could have her public, well, temper tantrum, preordained, of course, for the President's State of the Union address. For the cameras, by the way, the president that night was talking about COVID-19. She was busy ripping. And get this, February 5th, your beloved New York Times, the same paper accusing me of downplaying the virus when just the opposite is true, and I will prove it, ran this headline. Who says it's not safe to travel to China? New York Times was advising you to go over to China. That was dumb. The coronavirus travel ban is unjust, they said, and doesn't work anyway. In two separate Democratic debates in February, no, not one candidate on stage mentioned the coronavirus. Not one. Meanwhile, New York City's health commissioner was also downplaying the threat of the virus. Take a look.
That the risk to New Yorkers for coronavirus is low and that our preparedness as a city is very high. There is no reason not to take the subway, not to take the bus, not to go out to your favorite restaurant.
Now, let's fast forward to February 24th. Now, remember, Trump put the travel ban in effect almost a month earlier. Okay, we're in the middle of a public health emergency. There's Nancy Pelosi showing up, publicity stunt, crowded streets, San Francisco's Chinatown, hugging, shaking hands with her supporters and encouraging everyone to go and socially undistance. February 26th, yep, the Times ran another unhinged op-ed entitled, Let's Call It Trump Virus. Well, this is the New York Times that doesn't like me. If you're feeling awful, you know who to blame. In March, fake news CNN said that calling the coronavirus Wuhan or China coronavirus was racist, even though fake news Acosta himself used the exact same terminology in January. On March the 2nd, there's Mayor of New York, Conrad de Blasio, encouraging New Yorkers to go out on the town and catch a play. Same day, Governor Cuomo said, well, excuse our arrogance, but this disease will not be as bad in New York as other countries. It was worse. And on March the 4th, fake news CNN, Anderson Cooper, is what he had to say about the virus. Let's pay attention to his timeline.
Half of the people in America do not get a flu shot, and the flu right now is far deadlier. So if you're freaked out at all about the coronavirus, you should be more concerned about the flu, and you can actually do something about it and get a flu shot.
The facts on the ground are the facts on the ground. They did change at different times. We have to concede, even with Dr. Fauci. February 29th was saying the risk is still low. March 9th, Dr. Fauci even said for healthy people they could still go on a cruise ship. But that statement never made it into this weekend's New York Times hit piece against this program. They hate all things Trump, all things conservative, and they hate Sean Hannity, likes Donald Trump, and says so on radio and TV. Neither did they watch my timeline, which, by the way, I spent an entire hour going over with one of their top-notch fake news reporters. And it's been posted on Hannity.com, I believe, since March the 18th. We had Dr. Fauci on this program as early as January 27th, discussing the serious nature of the virus. The next day, I talked to a panel of doctors. February 10th, I had Dr. Fauci back on to talk about what about these people that are asymptomatic and the spread of the disease. It's all there, Hannity. You can see it all, Hannity.com, at Sean Hannity, Twitter. We've got it all there in print for all you liars, all of you involved in smear, slander, besmirchment, all of you character assassins. You can all read. You might actually learn something. We praised the president's bold action to halt travel from China. That was a game changer. This has been the biggest medical mobilization in the history of this country. Okay, everyone that needed a ventilator got a ventilator, not because any state had any of them. Hospitals were built in under a week, including the Javits Center. The Navy ships were sent. The ventilators were sent. The masks, the gowns, the gloves, the respirators, all sent. Record time. Never seen anything like it. Lives were saved. None of that made it into the fake news New York libel slander Times article. That's because the so-called journalists who work there, they're not interested in the truth. That is a fact. Instead, they care about bludgeoning enemies. For them, enemy number one is not me. That would be President Trump. Enemy number two is anybody and everybody, including voters that support President Trump. New York Times is not alone. Look at how fake news CNN and, yes, conspiracy television, Roswell, Rachel Maddow's MSDNC covered this serious virus over the past few weeks. Take a look in the middle of a national emergency.
Like a political moron.
The president is sounding very Baghdad Bob-like in the way that he's assigning blame to everybody but himself.
There are tens of thousands of people who will die in the country, or some of them have already died. More are still going to die because of Donald Trump's incompetence.
Here we have a president who is exploiting a national crisis to move forward his own agenda, his own revenge, his own profit.
The president determined to rewrite the history of his early and reprehensibly irresponsible response to this virus.
He's still acting reckless and unmoored.
Here in the United States, we are still not doing what we need to do to fight this deadly virus because of a complete lack of leadership.
Do you think there is blood on the president's hands, considering the slow response?
Wow, for the people you just saw this virus, yep, unfortunately, they politicized it pretty early on. One more opportunity, because they got everything else wrong about Donald Trump, Russia, Ukraine, impeachment. Never investigated the biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in history that we got right, they got wrong.